হ্যালো ফিউচার নার্সেস, ওয়েলকাম ব্যাক টু মাই চ্যানেল নার্স প্রফেশন বাংলা। আজকের প্রথম কোশ্চেন হচ্ছে, হুইচ অফ দ্য ফলোয়িং ইজ দ্য বেসিক স্ট্রাকচারাল অ্যান্ড ফাংশনাল ইউনিট অফ দ্য হিউম্যান বডি? টিস্যু, অর্গান, সেল, সিস্টেম। অ্যান্সার: সেল। The cell is the smallest structural and functional unit of the human body. Groups of similar cells form tissue, which combine to form organs. 2. Which cell organelle is primarily responsible for producing energy in the form of ATP? Ribosomes, mitochondria, Golgi apparatus, lysosomes. Answer: mitochondria. Mitochondria produce most of the cell's ATP through cellular respiration. Therefore, they are known as the powerhouse of the cell. Question 3. Which of the following tissues cover the external surface of the body and lines internal cavities? Connective tissue, muscle tissue, nervous tissue, epithelial tissue. Answer: epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue covers body surfaces and lines internal organs and cavities. It provides protection and also performs functions such as absorption and secretion. Question 4. Which type of muscle is involuntary and found mainly in the walls of hollow internal organs? Answer C. Smooth muscle. Smooth muscle is involuntary and is found in the walls of organs such as the intestine, stomach, urinary bladder, and blood vessels. It helps move substances through these organs. 5. Which part of the brain is primarily responsible for maintaining posture, balance, and coordination of movements? Cerebrum, cerebellum, medulla oblongata, hypothalamus. Answer: cerebellum. The cerebellum coordinates voluntary movements and helps maintain balance, posture, muscle tone, and movement accuracy. Question 6. Which part of the brain controls vital involuntary functions such as respiration and heart rate? Cerebellum, cerebrum, medulla oblongata, thalamus. Answer: medulla oblongata. The medulla oblongata contains vital autonomic centers that regulate respiration, heart rate, blood pressure, swallowing, and vomiting. Question 7. Which lobe of the cerebral cortex is primarily associated with voluntary motor activity and higher intellectual functions? Frontal lobe, parietal lobe, temporal lobe, occipital lobe. Answer: frontal lobe. The frontal lobe contains the primary motor cortex, which controls voluntary movement. It is also involved in planning, judgment, reasoning, and personality. Question 8. Which part of the nervous system carries impulses from receptors towards the central nervous system? Motor neuron, sensor neuron, interneuron, efferent neuron. Answer B. Sensory neuron. Sensory afferent neurons carry nerve impulses from sensory receptors towards the brain and spinal cord. They help the body detect sensations such as pain, touch, temperature, and pressure. Question 9. How many pairs of cranial nerves arise from the brain? 10, 11, 12, 31. Answer: 12 pairs. Humans have 12 pairs of cranial nerves numbered 1 to 12. They arise mainly from the brain and control sensory and motor function of the head, neck, and some internal organs. Question 10. Which cranial nerve is responsible for the sense of smell? Optic nerve, olfactory nerve, facial nerve, vagus nerve. Answer: olfactory nerve. The olfactory nerve, cranial nerve 1, is a sensory nerve responsible for the sense of smell. It carries smell related impulses from the nasal cavity to the brain. Question 11. Which chamber of the heart receives oxygenated blood from the lungs? Right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium, left ventricle. Answer: left atrium. The left atrium receives oxygenated blood from the lungs through the pulmonary vein and passes it to the left ventricle through the mitral valve. 12. Which chamber of the heart pumps oxygenated blood into the systemic circulation? Right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium, left ventricle. Answer D. Left ventricle. The left ventricle pumps oxygenated blood into the aorta, which distributes it throughout the body. Its thick muscular wall generates high pressure for systemic circulation. Question 13. Which valve is located between the left atrium and the left ventricle? Tricuspid valve, pulmonary valve, mitral valve, aortic valve. Answer: mitral valve. The mitral bicuspid valve lies between the left atrium and left ventricle. It prevents backflow of blood into the left atrium during ventricular contraction. Question 14. Which artery carries deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle to the lungs? Aorta, pulmonary artery, pulmonary vein, coronary artery. Answer: pulmonary artery. The pulmonary artery carries deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle to the lungs for gas exchange. It is an important reception because it carries deoxygenated blood despite being an artery. 15. Which blood vessel normally carries oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart? Pulmonary artery, superior vena cava, pulmonary vein, inferior vena cava. Answer C. Pulmonary vein. The pulmonary veins carry oxygenated blood from the lungs to the left atrium. They are an exception because veins normally carry deoxygenated blood, but pulmonary veins carry oxygenated blood. 16. Which of the largest artery in the human body? Pulmonary artery, carotid artery, femoral artery, aorta. Answer D. Aorta. The aorta is the largest artery in the body. It carries oxygenated blood from the left ventricle and distributes it to the systemic circulation. Question 17. Which blood cells are primarily responsible for transporting oxygen? Leukocytes, platelets, erythrocytes, lymphocytes. Answer: erythrocytes. Erythrocytes, red blood cells, transport oxygen mainly through hemoglobin, which binds oxygen in the lungs and releases it to body tissue. Question 18. Which component of blood is mainly responsible for blood clotting? Red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, plasma proteins only. Answer: platelets. Thrombocytes play a major role in hemostasis by forming a platelet plug at the site of vascular injury and supporting the coagulation process. Question 19. Which plasma protein is primarily responsible for maintaining colloid osmotic pressure? Globulin, albumin, fibrinogen, hemoglobin. Answer: albumin. Albumin is the most abundant plasma protein and is the major contributor to plasma colloid osmotic pressure, helping maintain fluid within the blood vessels. Question 20. Which type of white blood cell is usually the most abundant in normal peripheral blood? Answer D. Neutrophil. Neutrophils are normally the most abundant type of circulating white blood cell. They provide an important first-line defense against bacterial infection through phagocytosis. Question 21. What is the normal resting heart rate of a healthy adult? 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 40 to 100, 100 to 140. Answer: 60 to 100 beats per minute. The normal resting heart rate in a healthy adult is generally 60 to 100 beats per minute. A resting heart rate below 60 is termed bradycardia while above 100 is tachycardia. Question 22. Which structure is the primary site of gaseous exchange in the lungs? Answer: alveoli. Alveoli are the air sacs surrounded by pulmonary capillaries. They are the primary site where oxygen enters the blood and carbon dioxide leaves the blood by diffusion. Question 23. Which muscle is the principal muscle of inspiration? Intercostal muscle, diaphragm, rectus abdominis, pectoralis muscles. Major. Answer B. Diaphragm. The diaphragm is the principal muscle of inspiration. When it contracts, it moves downwards, increasing thoracic volume and allowing air to enter the lungs. 24. Which structure prevents food from entering the trachea during swallowing? Uvula, glottis, epiglottis, soft tissue, palate. Answer C. Epiglottis. The epiglottis is a flap of elastic cartilage that covers the laryngeal inlet during swallowing, helping prevent food and liquids from entering the airway. 25. Where does most absorption of nutrients occur in the human gastrointestinal tract? Stomach, duodenum and small intestine, large intestine, rectum. Answer: duodenum and small intestine. Most nutrient absorption occurs in the small intestine, especially the jejunum and ileum, through numerous villi and microvilli that increase the absorption surface area. Question 26. Which part of the small intestine is the longest? Duodenum, jejunum, ileum, cecum. Answer: ileum. The ileum is the longest part of the small intestine. It connects the jejunum to the cecum and is especially important for absorption of vitamin B12 and bile salt. Question 27. Which organ produces bile? Gallbladder, pancreas, liver, spleen. Answer C. Liver. The liver produces bile, which helps in the digestion and absorption of fats by emulsifying dietary lipids. Bile is then stored in the gallbladder. 28. Which organ stores and concentrates bile? Liver, gallbladder, pancreas, duodenum. Answer: gallbladder. The gallbladder stores and concentrates bile produced by the liver. During digestion, it releases bile into the duodenum to assist in fat digestion. Question 29. Which enzyme begins the digestion of carbohydrates in the mouth? Pepsin, trypsin, salivary amylase, lipase. Answer: salivary amylase. Salivary amylase, also called ptyalin, is secreted by the salivary gland. It begins in the digestion of starch and other carbohydrates in the mouth. Which part of the kidney is the functional unit responsible for urine formation? Nephron, glomerulus, ureter, renal pelvis. Answer: nephron. The nephron is the structural and functional unit of the kidney. It forms urine through glomerular filtration, tubular absorption, and tubular secretion. 31. Which structure in the nephron is primarily responsible for filtration of blood? Loop of Henle, collecting duct, glomerulus, distal convoluted tubules. Answer C. Glomerulus. The glomerulus is a network of capillaries within the renal corpuscle. It filters water and small dissolved substances from the blood to form glomerular filtrate. 32. Which hormone primarily increases water reabsorption in the renal collecting ducts? Insulin, antidiuretic hormone, thyroxine, cortisol. Answer: antidiuretic hormone. Antidiuretic hormone increases the permeability of the collecting ducts to water by promoting aquaporin to channels, thereby increasing water reabsorption and concentration urine. 33. Which hormone is secreted by the beta cells of the pancreas? Glucagon, insulin, somatostatin, thyroxine. Answer: insulin. Beta cells of the pancreatic islets secrete insulin. Insulin lowers blood glucose by promoting glucose uptake and storage, particularly in the liver, muscle, and adipose tissue. 34. Which hormone primarily increases blood glucose concentration? Insulin, glucagon, calcitonin, aldosterone. Answer: glucagon. Glucagon secreted by pancreatic alpha cell increases blood glucose mainly by stimulating glycogenolysis and glucogenolysis in the liver. 35. Which endocrine gland is commonly known as the master gland? Thyroid gland, adrenal gland, pituitary gland, parathyroid gland. Answer: pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is traditionally called the master gland because its hormones regulate the activity of several other endocrine glands, including the thyroid, adrenal gland, and gonads. 36. Which hormone is secreted by the thyroid gland and primarily regulates basal metabolic rate? Insulin, thyroxine, aldosterone, parathyroid hormone. Answer: thyroxine. Thyroxine is produced by the thyroid gland and plays a major role in regulating basal metabolic rate, energy expenditure, growth, and development. 37. Which hormone is primarily responsible for increasing blood calcium level? Calcitonin, parathyroid hormone, insulin, growth hormone. Answer: parathyroid hormone. Parathyroid hormone increases blood calcium level by promoting bone resorption, renal calcium reabsorption, and activation of vitamin D, which increases intestinal calcium absorption. 38. Which hormone is responsible for stimulating uterine contractions during labor? Prolactin, oxytocin, estrogen, progesterone. Answer: oxytocin. Oxytocin stimulates strong rhythmic uterine contraction during labor. It is released from the posterior pituitary and also plays an important role in milk ejection. 39. Which hormone is responsible for milk production after childbirth? Oxytocin, prolactin, estrogen, progesterone. Answer: prolactin. Prolactin secreted by the anterior pituitary stimulates the production of breast milk after childbirth. Oxytocin, in contrast, is mainly responsible for milk ejection. 40. Which bone is the longest bone in the human body? Answer: femur. The femur is the longest and strongest bone in the human body. It extends from the hip joint to the knee joint and bears much of the body's weight. 41. Which of the smallest bone in the human body? Answer: stapes. The stapes is the smallest bone in the human body. It is one of the three auditory ossicles in the middle ear and helps transmit sound vibration to the inner ear. How many pairs of ribs are normally present in an adult human? Answer: 12 pairs. The normal adult human has 12 pairs of ribs. The first 7 pairs are true ribs, while pairs 8 to 12 are classified as false ribs. Pairs 11 and 12 are floating ribs. 43. Which bone forms the forehead and contributes to the roof of the orbit? Parietal bone, frontal bone, temporal bone, occipital bone. Answer: frontal bone. The frontal bone forms the forehead and contributes to the roof of the orbit. It also forms part of the anterior cranial cavity. 44. Which joint is present between the humerus and ulna? Ball and socket joint, pivot joint, hinge joint, saddle joint. Answer: hinge joint. The humero-ulnar joint at the elbow is a single hinge type synovial joint. It primarily permits flexion and extension of the forearm. 45. Which part of the eye contains the photoreceptor cells responsible for vision? Cornea, iris, retina, sclera. Answer C. Retina. The retina contains the photoreceptor cells, rods and cones. Rods are mainly responsible for vision in dim light, while cones provide color and detailed vision. 46. Which receptor cells are primarily responsible for vision in dim light? Cones, rods, bipolar cells, ganglion cells. Answer: rods. Rods are highly sensitive to low levels of light and are mainly responsible for dim light, night vision. They do not provide detailed color vision. 47. Which structure of the inner ear is primarily responsible for maintaining balance? Cochlea, tympanic membrane, semicircular canals, auditory canals. Tube. Answer C. Semicircular canals. The semicircular canals detect rotational or angular movement of the head and help maintain balance and coordination of the body posture. 48. Which part of the female reproductive system is the usual site of fertilization? Uterus, cervix, ovary, ampulla of the fallopian tube. Answer D. Ampulla of the fallopian tube. Fertilization usually occurs in the ampulla, the wider part of fallopian tube. Here, the sperm fuses with the ovum to form a zygote. Question 49. Which organ produces spermatozoa in the male reproductive system? Prostate, epididymis, testis, seminal vesicle. Answer C. Testis. The testis produce spermatozoa within the seminiferous tubules. They also secrete testosterone, the primary male sex hormone. 50. Which organ is primarily responsible for detoxification, metabolism of nutrients, and synthesis of many plasma proteins? Kidney, liver, spleen, pancreas. Answer: liver. The liver performs major metabolic and detoxification functions. It also synthesizes important plasma protein such as albumin and several clotting factors. Thank you for watching and subscribe Nurse Profession Bangla.